Real quick before we begin, this video does not contain any potential spoilers that have been going around online recently. I will be strictly only discussing stuff published by Nintendo themselves. Now, on to the video. Hey folks, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom looks awesome. However, fans are still worried about the game, which is totally valid, it's natural. But as an experienced Zelda tuber and longtime Zelda fan, I personally disagree with most of the major worries I've seen going around regarding this game. And in today's video, joined by the amazing Triforce Trends, we're going to address those major worries and why you, as someone looking forward to this game, shouldn't be worried at all. Trust us, you really have no reason to worry. Right, Trends?
You should run for the hills, this game will be awful, is exactly what I wouldn't say. You have no reason to worry about this game at all, maybe. I'm Triforce Trends, I also do some Zelda stuff over on my channel that you can check out after this video, including a tie-in video to this one, so yeah, go and check that out.
I know Trends knows the script by now, as he's been on the channel a couple of times now, but for those who don't know, all guests on my channel get to say that famous line. On you go, mate.
Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack or drink and send them in to get featured right here, and also be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps the channel out, and let's get into this one.
Starting off, let's address the concerns around Princess Zelda receiving the damsel in distress treatment again. If you don't know what that treatment means, let me sum it up. The damsel in distress treatment refers to the classic, but honestly nowadays cheesy, damsel in need of saving from a knight in shining armour. A good example is basically every single Mario game plot. Princess gets kidnapped, the hero goes and saves her. It's a fairly common opinion amongst fans that this treatment is getting a bit old with the Zelda series, and that changing it up a bit would be really cool. Lots could be done to help with this concern. First and foremost, having Zelda simply more involved in the actual story would do wonders. Playable Zelda would also, but that's less likely than just more involvement. Though there was a supposed recent survey that hinted at potentially playing as both Link and Zelda. Anyway, to help assure some of you with this concern, I can say that going off everything we've seen and trying to piece together some form of a context, that Zelda does look to be a lot more involved. I will say that to a degree there will likely be some form of needing to save her. That's just part of Zelda games. However, if you piece together everything we know from the trailers, she is 100% going to be an actual part of the story, not just the damsel in distress. She's seen exploring alongside Link below Hyrule for starters. This off the bat is a lot more than pretty much every past game where she's almost just kidnapped and locked away early on without having done very much. I'm very glad that she is part of the actual adventure here. On top of that, there has been a lot of speculation about her being playable. It is just a guess, but if it was to happen, the damsel in distress treatment wouldn't even be noticeable if you ask me. But let's say it's just more involvement, which very much appears to be the case, and that already washes away a good bit of the treatment. We've never seen her this involved in the trailers, and trailers are supposed to tease us about the game. To me, this is teasing that she will be involved a lot more.
The Divine Beasts are something of a hot topic when it comes to complaints with Breath of the Wild. Even before Tears of the Kingdom was initially revealed, I think the dungeons in the next Zelda game were pretty up in the air. We didn't really know whether or not they were going to be like the Divine Beasts or like something completely different, maybe something more akin to Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild, or would they just go back to their traditional ways? We didn't know, and we still don't know, despite only being less than 3 months away from release, and I absolutely agree with the sentiment that it is a little worrying that we haven't seen them yet. But I want to try and put your minds at ease, if only very slightly and with minimal evidence. We've had a pretty good look at what's going to feature in the world of Hyrule this time around. The original kingdom, we're not entirely sure yet. The Sky Islands, they look to be a very big part of this game's exploration, and the caves. The caves themselves could feature as dungeon-like areas, but that's pretty heavy speculation. Now what we do know for sure is that the Zelda team has been working on this game for 5 to 6 years, even including a possible delay due to the pandemic. pandemic. I like to think that a lot of that development time has gone into the new dungeons. The only look at a possible dungeon we've seen up until this point is this pyramid from the last few trailers. The prevalent theory in the community seems to be that these set of islands are the game's equivalent of the Great Plateau. If this is the case, then there only seems to be one big structure on these islands that we can see. In the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild, we were given 4 shrines and a playground-like area, showcasing everything that's new in this type of Zelda game when compared to something more linear like Skyward Sword, with one of the biggest complaints of Breath of the Wild, even through reviewers, being that the big dungeons felt uninspired compared to the rest of the series. I can see the Zelda team going hard back the other way and making all of the dungeon areas very thematically appropriate. And if this pyramid is a dungeon, I think it serves as a great first example of that. The Zelda team has the tendency to do one thing and go really hard on the stuff that people complained about with the last game. Wind Waker is too cartoony? Make Twilight Princess, one of the most realistic games in the series. Some people think that game is almost too dark without being thematically dark? Make Skyward Sword. And in between, with a different art style and an even more involved story. That game's too linear. Let's make the most open game in the series. I can see the Zelda team overcorrecting with the dungeons, especially big time, and I kinda hope that thought has made you slightly less worried about them. But there is one thing that you always get in a traditional dungeon.
Yeah, following dungeons often leaves Link with an item, well, at least traditionally. Whether that's the case in this game or not, it's hard to tell, as we've seen a lot of what looks to be items, and it's hard to say if they've been picked up from dungeons of some kind, or are part of the new crafting system. Maybe both. Either way, there have been concerns around items and their influence in the game. Breath of the Wild took a very new approach in having a much more general arsenal of swords, shields and bows, along with the Sheikah Slate ruins. This was pretty cool, but it did lack a classic Zelda feel for many, myself included. That feeling of finding a truly unique item, one of a kind. The ruins were unique, but we were given all the essentials at the very beginning of the game, not like past games where you'd find the more unique items throughout the adventure, often finding them in a location where you need them. Those games were linear, so it may not work out exactly that way in this game, but going off multiple shots, we do have strong indications of unique items returning and filling that void. There is the shield flamethrower thing, this rod that Link spanks Italis with, and a lot of other smaller hints, as well as the new hand abilities. The first two alone are enough in my opinion to indicate the return of more unique items, and referring back to that point of the trailers only scratching the surface, these are likely just the beginning. The inclusion of unique items shouldn't be a huge concern. However, there is one other point that is. Weapon durability. Arguably one of the most talked about and controversial aspects of Breath of the Wild was the item durability. Love it or hate it, have ideas on how to fix it, or just don't care, it is undeniably controversial, and thus something that should probably be changed up a bit. I won't lie to you, out of everything in this video, this is one of the hardest things to reassure you on, but a big point helping me personally on my initial concerns regarding this is that because we've seen strong hints at more traditionally unique items returning, it probably means they won't just break like items from Breath of the Wild. At least the more unique ones. They could have a cooldown of some sorts, but I doubt they'd break. We have seen what appears to be malice damage to this sword in this shot, but we can't say for sure what that actually means just yet. It's likely some form of weapon durability, but it's probably different from Breath of the Wild, as that appears to be actual malice damage, similar to the Master Sword.
I think the general consensus on bosses in Tears of the Kingdom so far is, good lord, I really hope they aren't all the exact same like all the blights in Breath of the Wild, and honestly, this is a worry that I can't do too much justice against, because for this one in particular, we really are just gonna have to wait until the game comes out. End of dungeon bosses are still a mystery. We don't know whether these golem-like enemies will be the dungeon bosses, or whether they'll just be something at the top of the Sky Island. We just don't know yet. But I'm not talking about just dungeon bosses, because while they are supposed to be the biggest bosses in the entire overworld, that just wasn't the case with the overworld bosses in Breath of the Wild. The most fun I ever had taking down an enemy in the last game was taking down a Lynel for the first time. Lynels perfectly encapsulate exactly what I love about the new combat system. If I might indulge, I'm quite the fan of the Dark Souls games. I love the idea of a combat system feeling less like you're moving around and using an item to attack an enemy, and more like you're actually slowly taking it down with the swing of your weapon. And I think Lynels are the perfect version of that, really. I also think Guardians are pretty good at that too, but Lynels do it best. Guardians have a weakness since you can break its legs. Molduga have a few weaknesses, electricity and bombs in particular. I love a duel, it's one of the reasons why I think Darknuts would actually fit perfectly in Tears of the Kingdom 2. And my one piece of hopium that I can give you all in terms of worrying about bosses is that they were also something that people complained about in the last game pretty consistently. If the Zelda team really are listening to us, like they really do seem to be, then yeah, we'll be fine. Plus, one really good early sign is that we've already seen Gleeok, or something akin to Gleeok is going to be in the game. That is just great. Enemy variety wise, that shows me that there is a step in the right direction. I'm just hoping that variety is also in the final bosses in each dungeon, if there are even dungeons. I mean, I don't know, I'm speculating.
Moving on to something a bit different, there are some concerns by fans regarding the game possibly being too sandbox. If you don't know what that means, then allow me to explain. A sandbox game by definition is a game with gameplay elements that provide the player with a great degree of creativity and freedom to interact with. There doesn't necessarily have to be a goal, just letting your creativity run wild. A perfect example of a sandbox game that you all probably know of is Minecraft. Now, Tears of the Kingdom wouldn't be a sandbox to that level, with Zelda games being very well known for their story, puzzles and combat. That won't be gone. The fear of it being too sandbox and losing some of those aspects due to it is fair enough, especially given the latest trailer showing us what appears to be vehicle crafting and possibly item crafting. Nintendo have also described the game online like this: the adventure is yours to create in a world fueled by your imagination. I can definitely understand the concerns, but fear not. Yes, it probably will feature a little bit more freedom and creativity than we're used to, but if you take a moment to consider everything else shown, it's pretty clear that there will be a very big lore-filled story and an adventure like never before. All the fundamental pieces of making a Zelda game are still very much there in my opinion, and adding in a bit more creativity and freedom isn't going to take away from that, it's just going to add to it. Going back to that quote, further down on the same page they say the following: "In this sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you'll decide your own path through the sprawling landscapes of Hyrule and the mysterious islands floating in the vast skies above. Can you harness the power of Link's new abilities to fight back against the malevolent forces that threaten the kingdom?" My interpretation of that is that the first few lines do indicate more freedom and creativity, but are also not the full game as it focused on the main story as well in the last few lines. It's the best of both worlds. I don't think this will be a big issue, as it's a Zelda game at the end of the day, and being extremely sandbox isn't something they're known for. It'd be a pretty big shock if that was the case. It'll be a part of it for sure, but I don't think to the huge degree some are worried about.
The soundtracks to pretty much every single Zelda game are stellar. They truly have something that other soundtracks don't, and I personally think that's true of most Nintendo titles in general. Xenoblade, Fire Emblem, Mario, everything. But I know some people got really bored of the quiet nature of Breath of the Wild's music. If I'm being completely honest, I used to be on that side of the fence, but over time I've understood why that was done. It was done to set a tone. When you're making your way through Hyrule, you aren't thinking about the music. You know why? Because the music perfectly blends into gameplay. No matter what you're doing, the music will follow you. There's even specific tracks that will play when entering certain areas for the first time, and I just love that attention to detail. Even though I really liked how Breath of the Wild's soundtrack was handled looking back, I think I'm also in the camp that would like slightly more bombastic music in some areas, specifically in Divine Beasts or dungeon equivalents. The Divine Beast did one thing pretty well: puzzles. Barring that, I think that they were pretty bleh. And I think one of the main culprits in this area were the songs playing in the background. Looking at past dungeons in the series, we have iconic songs like the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time, or Snow Peak Ruins in Twilight Princess, or just a load of other songs that will stick with us until the end of time. The Divine Beast tracks were just pretty meh at getting me ready for some puzzling. Each had things that were different about them, but they still felt too samey, much like the beasts themselves. I think the soundtrack in the next game is going to be much different. I still think it'll be slow and quiet in the overworld, but if dungeons do make a triumphant comeback, we'll likely see music that really gels with their environment. And I also think that if caves are a big part of the game, then they'll also have some louder pieces of music, introducing a sense of ambiance, maybe with water dripping around the caverns, but that's very speculative. The point is, no, I do not think that the Zelda team have slacked in this area too, but again, I could be proved wrong, and maybe this is a very valid worry. I mean, all of the worries are valid, but you understand.
The last worry on this list is the concern of seeing too much. I honestly don't think too much is needed to be said to assure you, other than reiterating that previous point about how trailers just scratch the surface of the game. Their purpose is to tease you and ignite an interest to go on and play the game, eventually discovering everything within it. If you look at Breath of the Wild's trailers, everything we saw in those felt like a lot, but once you actually played the game, there was a lot more. And Breath of the Wild was a fairly empty overworld for Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom can only be bigger, and already looks bigger, and this is just scratching the surface. What we've seen across these 4 trailers and that one little clip posted as part of a delay announcement is so little of everything that the game will have in store for us entirely. This is all just the preview to what will be a massive adventure. It's fair to say that despite all my reassurances there, I do have my worries as well. It's natural in my opinion when you don't know something. However, when I take a moment, or however long this video lasts, to sit down and think about it logically, I'm reminded that it'll all be fine in the end, and these worries won't even be on my mind when I'm actually playing the game and having a blast. This is the Zelda team and Nintendo we're talking about. These games don't miss. That is my conclusion. But what do you think, Trends?
I love this series with my whole heart, and even I'm a little worried about a lot of what we've talked about today. But somehow getting it out there has really helped my worries. I'd love to see some of your thoughts in the comments, and it might even help you to feel less worried. I genuinely believe that this game has the opportunity to be the greatest Zelda title ever released. But I guess we will see over time.
We definitely will see in time. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Triforce Trends for joining me in today's video. He's an awesome guy, great friend, and you should definitely go check out the video over on his channel that we did about why Tears of the Kingdom won't just be Breath of the Wild 1.5. It's a banger, go check it out.
Thanks for having me on, it was just as fun as ever with all the new stuff to talk about. If you're still worried about some stuff, then definitely go and check out that video on my channel. I'd love to see some new people in the comments, and thank you guys.
Be sure to drop a wee like down below if you enjoyed, and also consider subscribing for more fabulous Zelda content all the way up to the release of Tears of the Kingdom and beyond. Follow my social media pages linked below to keep up to date, or send in a snack or drink photo. And as always, a huge massive amazing shout out goes to all of my channel supporters, with a very special thanks to new supporters Sam and McCoblin Blademaster. Thanks a ton. Your support really helps me to make these videos week in, week out, all month long, 365 days a year. If you'd like to join them and get yourself a shout out upon joining and your name at the end of every video, then consider supporting via the links below. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day or night, and until the next time, I've been Hyro Gamer.